Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm talking to Martin MacDonald. It's been a couple of years since he's been on the show, and they're always fantastic chats. If you don't know Martin, then you're going to really love him during today's discussion, and you may even want to go back and revisit some of our old episodes. He is a performance nutritionist. He is the CEO of Mac Nutrition, which is qualifying people to be certified nutritionists within 13 months. It's a great course. I'm sure many of you listening have done it yourself. So we dig into a bit of what he's been up to, what Mac Nutrition is doing and how it's continuing to grow. We also talk about some of the impact of AI and where he sees that impacting his business and him as a whole and how he's currently using it. And then we dig into the largest chunk of this discussion, of which this is going to be part one. We're going to have to come to a part two. This was a long chat, as you will have seen. We dig into everything aggressive dieting. Martin has been on the podcast several times talking about this, hinting upon calculators and blueprints, and now they're officially out. And I wanted to catch up and see what was changed, if anything had been updated, any new thoughts he had, and to just see what's been going on that front, and loads of takeaways and tidbits. And if you have ever struggled to lose fat, and you maybe have only ever tried slow, steady approaches, then I think you're going to be really interested to hear what an aggressive diet might be able to do for you. So guys, definitely enjoy this chat. And as always, please do make sure to tag myself, tag Martin, share it on your social media, share it with anyone you think might find it beneficial. Give us a review, a rating, whether or not you're on Spotify or Apple. Give us a 5 stars. Say some kind words. It's really appreciated. It makes the podcast grow, and I can continue to draw in amazing guests such as Martin. If you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, or wherever you are, subscribe. Give us a comment, give us a thumbs up. I really appreciate you. But without further ado, let's get into the chat. Martin, I can't quite believe it's been 2 years since we last spoke. Actually kind of feels like quite a while. It was episode 317. We're now getting close to episode 500. And I keep thinking, hey, I need to do something big for that. So maybe I'll call you in for like our huge nutrition roundtable or something.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It would be cool. But it's great to be catching up with you. And I thought, what better question to ask than what's new? What's new in Martin's world? I thought rather than us catch up off air, we can catch up on air, and everyone else can understand what's going on with Martin too, if they haven't been keeping up to date with everything that's been going on in your world, where you've been sharing it.
Goodness me, 2 years, a lot's gone on. I won't talk about it much, but I started a new Instagram account. People can go search that, see if they can find it. I don't know. Have you seen it? Yeah. It's more just my personal life. It's funny because it changed from what I thought it would be. I thought it was just like a creative avenue for just stuff I like to talk about, philosophy, just life stuff, wisdom stuff. You know, with my podcast, I have some certain wisdom episodes, but I kept them broad and those sorts of things. Well, enough that everyone would be interested. You know, people following me for nutrition. I didn't just want to bombard them. I didn't want to become like an influencer who just talks about anything and stuff they're definitely not qualified to talk on. But there are things I just like talking about and read a lot about, and like talking about. So I thought, you know what, I'm just talking about this behind closed doors. I love talking and teaching, and the wisdom episodes and parenting stuff went so well on my podcast. I was like, you know what, I'll just have this separate area where I can talk about anything and everything. You know, relationships, sex positivity, just loads of stuff that I thought, you know what, I don't want to push that on people because some of it's quite niche topics, ethical non-monogamy, like stuff where it's just like, you know what, I'll have someone else to talk about these things. So I started that. That's cool. It's led to some nice situations and discussions but as well created busyness, which I didn't need in my life. And I can't believe, it has been 2 years. So Mac Nutrition Uni, which I think we discussed in various different avenues and points that we covered, we're now government regulated, level 5 diploma status, which was a massive, arduous, hoop jumping task. Something that I was hugely proud of was that you know, some of it's good, the process, that we are really assessing what we say we are. And some of it's funny, like we had to change our exam. Like people are like, oh, what have you had to change? The exams got much harder, easier. What's happened? It was things like you can't use please in questions because it makes you like your face is what I did. I was like,
Yeah.
what? Sorry, but it makes it sound optional. And I was like, no, it doesn't. Like you're in an exam, answer the damn question. But we had to remove things like that. But the cool thing was we didn't have to change any of the content.
Awesome.
And so it kind of proved to me that my years and years of teaching in academia, I'd remembered some of it. We were meeting the good objectives and we were assessing them appropriately. But it's just so much paperwork. But it's just wonderful because it hasn't benefited us really, which I actually thought it would more. But I say that we've kind of blown some of our competitors out of the water. One of our main UK competitors actually asked us to buy them, which for pennies, which was kind of like, I didn't shout about it because it's a bit, I don't know. You know me, I don't really care about getting into online debates or crossing the line sometimes, but
Unless it's glucose goddess.
yeah, well, yeah, this is what I mean. I don't really care about rubbing people up the wrong way, but when it's for a purpose, whereas this would just be gloating, and that's not typically my style. So it was cool because now we're obviously this compared to there's lots of online certifications, as you're aware, but where there are qualifications, really we're 2 to 3 times the accredited level of content, our scope of practice. Like the scope of practice of Mac Nutrition Uni graduates now is the same as, if not higher, than degree qualified nutritionists. So we get a lot of hate, on any adverts we do because that does rub you up the wrong way. If you've paid tens of thousands of pounds, and I know it because I spent the same money, it hurts to go, someone can do the same or more than me in a third of the time for a tenth of the cost. Like it does suck. I get why it rubs people up the wrong way, but it's the way of the world. We never set out to do that. We just set out to create an amazing qualification that made amazing practitioners. And that has happened, fortunately, but it's now got to the point where actually employment opportunities, because we're against the regulated qualifications framework, it serves people internationally. It's 35 countries now where we have bespoke policies for cover, so people can practice and full indemnity for everything we teach on M&U. So, and we're getting recognized in really nice places, like even in the world of eating disorders, people are seeking us out, as in the Public Health England initiatives.
Awesome.
Or no, Health Education England, or I can't even remember. So we're not not in a maverick sense, but lots of people do M&U because they're like, I want to help people with eating disorders, and we're like, no, do not do that. But now we're getting asked to provide practitioners, our graduates, for programs working as part of multidisciplinary teams with psychiatrists and dietitians, and it's just amazing. So since we've spoken, like, it's just been a lot of hard work. And then I know we're going to talk a lot about aggressive dieting, but I obviously did the sort of aggressive dieting tour. I didn't call it that, but went over and did a few talks in various places, Australia and Singapore and London and Vegas. The after parties were cool.
I bet.
Yeah, that just ended up becoming a beast because I thought, do you know what? I'll create the calculator, which we've discussed some of the earlier versions of that. The calculators are now supercharged compared to what they used to be, but it became this entire course. And realistically, what it's become, it's the second best thing I've ever created, and it never meant to be. So it's caused me to be insanely busy, which I didn't need. But I just wanted, it's one of those things, I think, just perfectionism and wanting to do right by people. And I'm starting to see the fruits of that. Just before we came on air, I did that story that I tagged you in. And just, I'm hearing about all these people going, whatever that guy said, I've lost, I can't remember, 40 pounds. Was it 40 or 60? Another guy had emailed me that day. just with these insane stories of success. And the best thing is when you hear about people who anyone can lose weight in any different way, or a lot of people can in lots of different ways. But it's people who are like, I've struggled with X, Y, Z all this time, whether they're, going through menopause or whether they have struggled all their life or poor relationship with food and just different ways, or just struggled to get something that works, to then go, it's finally unlocked something. And I'm finally making this progress in, again, we'll talk about this, but in 9 weeks, I've achieved what I couldn't even get close to in 52 weeks last year. So, anyway, yeah, so lots of stuff's happened. Been busy, but also much the same. Although I train less now, which is not good, but I am going to start looking after my health soon. But anyway.
When you say less training, how little is that?
Well, so as of January this year, I just last year, just everything, work, life, just everything just took, and complacency, but also illness and injury and all sorts of different things. And also, I had a relapse of PTSD, which really just was really bad and led to lots of other stuff. So January, it was a bit like New Year, New Me, that sort of thing. But I just was like, you know what? I've got to that age where I should start paying a bit more attention. I can't just rest on. I think I've said on your podcast before, I'm very grateful and I acknowledge my genetics. I think we had a really good chat about genetics once. I don't know if you remember.
We did, yeah.
And I really enjoyed that podcast, by the way. And off the back of that, I ended up just doing like loads of reading of just like, yeah, we delved into some cool areas I need to geek out. But, I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, look at me, I know what I'm talking about because I've got abs. Because I can do, people can succeed. Bodybuilding is a great example. Succeed in spite of suboptimal. It's not because of what they're doing. And I can not try and look a certain way. But I've always been like, it's not because I'm clever. It's not because I'm better than you. It's not because I'm morally superior. It's just because, fortunately, my body works with me. But I think it's starting to work against me a bit more. So having to actually try like other people do sucks. So training wise, I am back probably 2 to 3 gym sessions a week, but it's more physical activity. Like yesterday, I slept at the office, the day before yesterday, sorry, and then worked all day and was like, I will go to the gym. Like I have a gym in the office, a really nice gym. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have seen it.
Even
yeah.
like got changed, and then I was like, I'm aggressive dieting currently. I've just started like a little, probably a 3 weeks phase, because it does make me more productive as well. And I was like, oh, I'm a bit hungry. Well, I'll just eat. And then I was like, I can't train immediately. So then I just went back in the office and started working. And then it was like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, I'm not going to go and I was just going to do some like cardio stuff, some assault bike, something, just a few minutes. But I was like, I'm going to wake myself up at 1:30 in the morning. So anyway, I'm terrible. I think I've said to you before, like less than 1,000 steps a day. If I go to the gym, I get up to 3,000. And you're probably just like, what is wrong with you? Like, I can't imagine in fact, you sent me, did you? You sent me your step.
You did ask for some data about me, yeah.
Yeah.
So to inform the calculator.
Yeah. Is it okay for me to talk about the data you?
Oh yeah, I mean,
like
I'm completely
12,500 steps average a day. Like, oh my God. Like, who are you?
Yeah, I'm that guy. I think the time you spend working, I'm probably in the gym or walking the dog a lot of the time, to be fair. It's not like I go out my way to get these steps, but they do accumulate. But man, yeah, you're doing a lot. And it's awesome. Actually, I just want to reflect upon the government regulation level 5 diploma status. Just the fact, obviously I said to you off air, like, I don't know exactly what that means, but clearly it's important and people now can get kind of more job opportunities, everything along those lines with your accreditation. Because you're right in that I've just seen, it's kind of like research reviews. There's quite a lot of research reviews now versus when we were first started. It's like Alan Aragon's research review.
That's so true.
there's lots available now, and there's lots of very good ones. And like the Mass Research Review have done things to try and make theirs like levels above others by various kind of parts of it. And I love that you've done that too with MNU, in that, yeah, there's other like diet courses you could do, but do they give you this opportunity at the end of it? Do they go into that level of depth? So it's great that you're continuing. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, just given off your chat there, and I know you're a bit of a workaholic, that you want everything to be pristine and the best.
Yeah. No, it has been. I think we've never gone out to beat anyone else, really. We just wanted to do what we wanted to do, but naturally want it to be the best, want to serve people. And like our level of sort of involvement with students and the tutor support aspect and the extra sort of business support, you can just see it's nice because it's becomes, I don't know if self-fulfilling prophecy is really, but it's self-sustaining, because we've had such amazing success from our graduates that people see them and they're like, I want to be him or her. And then they just become walking, talking testimonials. So it's lovely. And then again, because we treat them so well, they come back to us and they're happy to do, things for us inside the mentoring lab. You obviously did yours for us just as an expert on your podcast one, which is just nice. And it's just getting people in to really support them with being successful. Because I think me coming from an academic background, no one was thinking how these people are going to go in the real world. It was teach them until they can do a master's, then do a master's until we can get them onto a PhD. It's like, I know the universities get a lot of stick these days from just being almost like a wheel. And then, I mean, most of the people I graduated with went into recruitment. So it's like, so I would hate that if people are like, where do MNU graduates end up? It's like recruitment. So yeah.
That just reminds me immediately of like my PT qualification. It was very much like just tick the box that I've got it, and doing that didn't give me really anything that was going to be helpful practically going into being a PT. It was just kind of like I needed to do it to be able to go get the job. They didn't even help you in terms of like sales or how to get clients or finances, any of that sort of advice. You're just, I mean, not that education in general does that. So it's great that you've also got that as part of, and clearly that investment into those maybe somewhat non-specific areas has paid off, and it's continuing to kind of pay back it. And that's just great to hear.
Yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, it sounds like a lot has happened outside of like just life things and like different adventures and things going on your end, which is always great. And it shows that you're a well-rounded person too. I think that's always nice. And
just about, yeah.
Especially with, I actually would be interested. I know this is a completely tangential question to anything we've spoken about. AI obviously is like, that's in vogue. It's going to be in vogue for however long. And I do think something like MNU, something I think that appeals to a lot of people is the community and the group and all of that. And you're part of something bigger than just the course itself.
Yeah, so true.
And I think probably leaning into that's going to be good in the coming years. I don't know if you've got any thoughts generally on like AI and its impact on anything you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. We are having a lot of AI meetings at the minute. I think we're fortunate where things currently are. The only reason I'm investing now is because I know you need to be like the iPad generation of kids that, they'll fare better in certain areas because of the way that they're thinking, and technology is becoming second nature. Like that's the next generation of AI. Is I don't want to wait for it to become useful, because so much of it in real world coaching is not useful. I saw an advert the other day from a coach that was like, I only spend 5 minutes coaching my clients a day now. Download my system based on AI and you won't have to coach yours either. And I was like, this isn't the flex you think it is. You sound horrendous. I imagine he doesn't actually have any clients, because if he did, he would know that he wouldn't be saying those things, because he's basically going, guys, you know all that money you're paying me for? I don't even coach you. It's AI. Like it's anyway, the world of charlatans. But from a nutritional perspective, I don't know if you're aware of this. I wasn't, but ChatGPT being one of the most famous ones, can't do maths. So people are pumping out these macro plans and these meals, and they're all wrong. Like, if you bother to just read the lines, it'll go like, what was one it told me the other day? I think it was like I think it was completely wrong on like a meal or a day's food, and I was like, you're not doing this right. Even your numbers don't just add up. And then I like type the numbers in. I get so angry at it, like it's a human. I don't know if you've seen any of the
It's
memes.
so friendly too.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
Let me try that again. And then it doesn't. And I'm like, why can't you do this? But yeah, essentially, it's it tries to do too much and it tries to solve too many problems. So I had to end up explaining to it, like, it was creating matter out of nothing. Like, it was like 50 grams of whey protein isolate, I think, but it was saying it had something like 46 grams of protein, 5 grams of carbs, and 1 gram of fat. And then I was like, in the human world, you can't create more matter. You have 50 grams of a substance. It can't contain 46 plus 5 plus 1 because that's more matter than it began with. So it can't have that as a consideration. Oh, you are right. I'm like, oh, well, why don't you know this? You're supposed to be this supercomputer. But I think when I see people going, oh, yeah, you can just use it. You can just create these meal plans. It's like, it can't. It's using an imperfect database, but it can certainly be used in certain senses. But I think for the minute, it's just a slightly cleverer way to automate. So some things within the mentoring lab where we're teaching our students just time saving and, simple stuff. Back when I was a real practitioner, I wasn't doing check-ins in the way that people are like, oh, I've got a type form or a Google sheet, and then it's zapping across to, or they're filling this in and it's zapping across to my Google sheet and filling in their data and whatever. None of that existed. So it's more just, again, AI, we're using it to just supercharge the ability to automate. So it can do a bit more logical reasoning. It's not just, binary automation. But I just don't think, I don't know, and I'm not an expert on this, I'll preface it with that, but I just don't think it'll ever replace so much of what coaching really is. Like, even when I started coaching, and this is a good discussion to have with you, you could get away with being a macro coach. Like,
That was a name for some coaches. They call themselves like a macro coach or ice cream fitness, stuff like that. Was like flexible dieting associated, where it's like everyone knows that now. It's not a selling point.
And even still today, you get bodybuilding coaches who, here's my check-in photos, coach. What shall I do? Drop 10 grams of carbs and add 15 minutes of walking. Like, you're paying someone money for that advice. That's not advice. It's just like, it is, but it's also like, how much are you paying for that? And are you getting anything else as part of this process? All it is just eat less and exercise more, which everyone would laugh at. But because and what we're going to do in peak week is, and then these insane protocols that are just, okay, this week you're going to drop all your carbs out and bump your fats because we're going to boost anabolism, and then we're going to ramp fats, or, switching things up. And it's like, none of this makes any difference to someone's leanness. These crazy protocols and people having to pretend to know more because they are just a macro coach. So I think in the world of AI, it can't replace what true coaching is. Like, it's definitely replacing the macro coaches. And I think certain people have come out with apps which really have already, even before AI, they replaced macro coaches. I think like Lane's app pretty much did a similar thing. So
Carbon, macro factor as well.
Yeah, macro factor. Like, you can't exist if you're just one of those coaches now. So, but it can't replace community. It can't replace rapport and building adherence and the buy-in. One of the things, if we get there, around discussing my aggressive diet blueprint, which I thought of, was something called perceived behavioral control. And we know through the research that this thing, perceived behavioral control, is something that we go into in depth with MNU around the behavior change modules. But by enhancing so perceived behavioral control is, as it says on the tin, your perception that you have control over your behavior and therefore the outcomes. So if someone has that belief and they feel that they have some autonomy in the process, but they also have understanding of a bit like, well, I don't know what happens if. But if someone does know, it's like, oh, it's okay when that happens. The appropriate response to that is X, Y, Z. I have a belief system whereby, yeah, I don't feel powerless to the outcome, and we know that this has a better prognosis for weight loss and weight loss maintenance. So, it's the blueprint. I've talked a lot about this and how the blueprint almost inherently increases someone's perceived behavioral control through the process of aggressive dieting. But that's also what coaching does. Is it helps someone go, you're coaching me, you're teaching me, I'm understanding more. But also, if I ever feel a little bit rocky or a little bit knocked on my confidence or things aren't working, I can go to this person that I trust and they can fill in that gap. So like, AI is not going to fill that, as far as I can see, for a whole long time. Maybe one day when you've got these robots walking around, you don't even know if it's a human. But not for the time being. And like you said, community, like I love community in every aspect. Everything I do just ends up becoming community. I wasn't supposed to create it, but I created the aggressive dieting community. We weren't really supposed to do it, but for MNU, we've got the mentoring lab, and that's our whole community. And even if I play, I've banned myself mostly from computer games, but even if I do like stuff like that, I just end up creating community and being like a leader. It's nice.
It's in your nature.
If I go to parties, I talk about on my other account, I end up like, yeah, there needs to be a group and we'll all chat. And do you know what? We'll all go for lunch beforehand to make everyone happy and comfortable. Anyway, your community is great.
It reminds me of, it's a meme where it was like, how do introverts make friends? And it's basically like an extrovert pulling the introvert like in to like say hi, and you're definitely that extrovert and I'm that introverted person where I'm just like, I need someone to come pull me into this community, which is great. And the world needs more Martins and people like that, so that's awesome. And I very much have the same sort of view on AI, at least at the moment. It is getting crazy though. I think there's probably enough of your voice, my voice out there where you could probably in, I don't know, the next year, they'll get something where it could produce a whole podcast with us and probably kind of guess what we'd say and develop like the podcast we're doing now somehow. I don't think it'll be to the level of this, but maybe one day.
I think forgetting the latter bit there of like knowing what we would say, I feel like already there is certain AI things that you can feed it enough of yourself and then it uses your likeness and it can talk. I don't know if I'm making that up or it's AI has convinced me of that, but I think you pretty much can. I think on one of obviously we're recording this on a certain app or program and there's other ones like this, but I'm sure you can give it a script and it can fill in words if you've missed a word during something and it can move your lips.
This one might be able to do it. I'm not sure. I haven't tried, but I think it starts to become, this one has loads of like, you can remove the ums, the ers, the pauses. I'm just like, it starts to become, at least when I'm listening to it as a listener, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I listen to podcasts because I want to absorb it and enjoy it and it feel relaxing. Whereas when it's just like boom, 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 it starts to become a bit like short form.
Yeah.
Kind of those jump cuts on reels and things.
You're one of those, your podcast is in that way and you're one of those people. But honestly, you know the way I talk and I don't mind going on tangents and I don't make my point instantly and I like to give a story around a point. The number of negative comments I get on my YouTube videos is wild because they're like 3 minutes. So one guy commented and this got quite a lot of like thumbs up because like 3 minutes in and you still not got to the point. And I just replied back going, 3 minutes in of great information and things haven't yet reached a climax, you're gonna disappoint many, many women in your life or something like that. And just loads of people just like crying, laughing faces. And it's like 3 minutes and I'm talking about something like de novo lipogenesis. I think it's on my how carbohydrates can't make you fat video. And it's like 3 minutes and he's already bored. Like I haven't given him the golden nugget of information. I get that I definitely do. I like just to talk, and people compliment it like, "Oh, I love listening to you on my walks." It's like I've created hundreds of hours of content, and people are like, "I've listened to everything you've ever done." And I'm like, God, imagine I was succinct in my stories. It's just ridiculous. So, yeah, some people do just want this fast life where it's just jump cuts, like you talked about. But you got to do what feels right to you and what's nice. And I think there are probably better ways in this day and age. It probably is better to just go with the times of the new TikTok brain rot generation, but that's to make money and do business, whereas that's not really what I'm about. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever change.
Are
I
you
don't
on
think you
TikTok
should.
out of interest?
Do I?
Are you on TikTok?
I have recently joined, but I joined in that period. I was really busy, so I've barely done anything on it. But it is the place where I'm such a nobody that it's kind of the most interesting place because
Yeah.
and I am a nobody when people like tag me in a post about or a comment like you should look at Martin, educate yourself. People like Martin Nutrition, and I'm like, you think you've done something by tagging me? This person just goes some other random joker with an opinion on the internet. They don't have any, and me getting into a debate doesn't. It's not like, well, here's my credentials, or here's what I've done, or here's who I am. Um, it doesn't convince anyone. So, but on TikTok, it is a real Wild West. And, it's probably where I get the most comments like aggressive dieting, like, how about doing something sustainable, mate? Yeah. And it's just like, oh, or maybe you should do some research. Like, oh, okay. Anyway.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I am on TikTok, but I'm not prolific. I'm not prolific anywhere anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to define what prolific is. That would be a whole different discussion of social media and growth and stagnation and keeping up to the algorithms, all of that. That starts to become a big game, and it comes back to the point you just made there. Like, don't change. Like, if you don't, as long as you're surviving and you're happy, like, you don't need to change. Obviously, keep up to date with the times if the business is massively suffering.
Yeah. I think that it does create complacency, being hungry for something because I think that's one thing that gave me a bit of a hit was I achieved everything I could ever have wanted to in business so quickly because I didn't have big aspirations that I just don't have a drive. And it's annoying because I wish I was like struggling to put food on the table because I'd be so much more productive. But it's also lovely to be able to, I have to just remind myself, oh, you get to do this because you were lucky or I at least worked very, very, very hard the first 10 years of my career. But I still just feel like I've got so much to give. So I'm like, I need that motivation to go out and just like put stuff out and help people because I see so much misinformation still. Menopause is the big one, which I woke up this morning, first thing on my feed was someone lying about zone 2 and it has 0 benefits for women. And I was like, oh my God. And I knew how much I had to do today. And I was like, in the olden days, I would have immediately gone and just recorded something and shown the research and said how this woman's an absolute muppet. I just don't have the time.
Yeah. Oh man. I know I said I wasn't going to go down this rabbit hole, but obviously Mike Israetel. You've met Mike Israetel, and in many ways, like, you are similar in that you're very charismatic, you're hilarious, very well educated, you speak well. I know I'm blowing a lot of smoke here, but like, you could do, and I know it's not as easy as you could do a Mike Israetel, but it's like, if anyone's an example of in the evidence-based space of boom, he suddenly exploded. Not suddenly, of course. Like, I know we all knew him before he was where he is now, and it's been a big grind, kind of like an iceberg, like in terms of like the amount of work he's done. But I imagine looking at someone like that, you're like, oh, what do I need to do to?
I look at Mike all the time, and he just, I wish I channeled more of my inner Mike in that it feels like I don't really care what people think, but I care about doing something that might not hit. So people can be like, "You're rubbish. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't get to your points quick enough. Whatever." But I feel like if I've got a way I want to do something and I can't do it exactly that way, like lighting, I want to make sure I just have some good lighting, or I'm going to do a process, I'm going to do it right. It's the perfectionist attitude. I don't care about what people think, but I get stuck in my ways too much. Mike just like, it feels like he just picks up the phone and he just record anything. He'll post anything, any picture. And, he's got however many thousands of posts. I don't even know if I have 1,000 posts on Instagram, and I've been on it for.
Hope so, because I have I think I'm close to 10,000 probably.
I only have 978 posts
Oh, no.
on Instagram, right? And it's like, what is wrong with me?
I have over 6,000, I just checked.
Wow. But he just posts anything and everything. And sometimes he might get 500 likes on something, but I'm there, it's showing it to me, and I'm like, that's hilarious. I think that's
I have
funny.
more than Mike. Sorry, I just had to say that.
More posts
than Mike. He is 4.5. I'd probably be on the app too much.
No, but also he did change his account because his last one got blocked, or not blocked, but it was something about to do with. So I can't use the word aggressive dieting anymore because it's I've had stuff deleted off TikTok and Instagram saying it's offensive. Hate speech because I use the word aggressive diet. It thinks I'm like talking about aggression or something. The stuff some people get away with, and then I'm getting punished for putting it in Instagram jail. But yeah, I think he was talking about a topic, a non-controversial topic, and used a word that it thought he was talking about guns or I don't know, something.
Wow.
And then
that wouldn't surprise me. Mike's a bit off the cuff, isn't he? So
yeah. But anyway, I should when certain things that I want to do with get the aggressive diet blueprint all signed off, all perfect, all singing, dancing. Again, MNU, so much work. But the other problem with that is we do update the lectures with the research. So that will be, and that's a never ending job.
That's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
And necessary for you guys, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then we're actually launching this female nutrition and health certification. I don't know if you've seen any murmurings of that. Let's not go into it because I'll probably get told off for saying something I shouldn't. But that's going to be a big project. But at some point, I just want to sit back and go, do you know what? Now I'm just going to talk and just put out free information like I did in the first 10 years of my career. And then hopefully just have impact. I know I'm having an impact, but it's nicer to have it on a much more broad scale. Like I know I'm leaving a huge legacy, and I know even the small amount of stuff I'm doing, it's changing the industry. Even with the aggressive dieting stuff, I can already see people who are like totally against it. All of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, is a viable method or whatever. It's funny. So, but yeah, I want to do it more, and I will.
And yeah, I can definitely see that perfectionism element from you because we have been talking about aggressive diets for for a long time. And I know it took you a while
it's like
to get the calculator out there, right?
Yeah. It's probably end of 2015, I first did something. So that's almost 10 years now. And then we probably first chatted in the first 2 to 3 years of that. And then, yeah, craziness.
And that brings me, and a great segue to the first question I actually have for you on this, because that was the main topic of the podcast, of course. We're probably going to get some people shout us down for having had such a random chat. I don't know how long we've been going, like 30 minutes, and we've not even discussed it. I think people enjoy that chit chat, at least I do. So, hey, screw them. Yeah. But yeah, obviously, as you've said, rapid fat loss gets a bad rap, or rep, however. And especially in the evidence-based circles, depending where you're at, I think some people will view it as something that's viable. Other people are like, no, definitely can't be doing that. Is there anything that you think those individuals really misunderstand? And when can this actually be very appropriate, do you think?
I mean, so with regards to aggressive dieting, I think it gets negativity and pushback from every avenue of the world because from the evidence-based community, I don't even think the evidence-based community is any worse than the Gen Pop TikTok stuff sometimes. I think it is better actually because some people actually read the research and it's so unbelievably evidence-based. Like I haven't created anything fancy here. I've just summarized 50 years of research into something that's palatable, understandable, and actionable. Like, I've not really created a great deal. I've just spent a lot of time making it super useful, and also doing some of the maths for people that they would struggle with, which is an area I excel in, and then also putting it alongside coaching, and also taking the research, which research is obviously a very specific thing where you have to control variables and you can't throw the kitchen sink at something. And if you do, it's bad. Like these supplements which go caffeine plus L-theanine, L-carnitine, whatever other magical fat burner, alpha lipoic acid, we used this supplement and it boosted metabolism by 1% and reduced, and it's like, it all happened because of the caffeine. We know all of those things happen just because of the caffeine. All of the rest of it is bunk. And so good research changes one variable. And unfortunately, that leads to a situation where you don't necessarily create an optimal protocol. And that's what I think I've very much done. The aggressive dieting stuff is just taking all of the different sections of the research and packaging it into something that is coachable and is as effective as it can possibly be, whilst also then adding on. I would say my aggressive diet blueprint, which is obviously this now big course. I don't know if you know this. I think it's like more than 50 sort of mini lectures now.
Wow.
Which, it was supposed to not be that.
This perfectionism again. You have to answer every question that possibly could come up.
Every question, and also protect people against themselves, and also look at every single avenue. Because again, I'm not coaching people. So I post all of these amazing results, but I'm not directly coaching. In the aggressive diet community, I have started coaching because it has really lit a little bit of love for it. It's been really nice to just see people's lives changing, which I haven't had that super immediate feedback like this for so many years. It's been amazing. And also one of the things about aggressive dieting is I do think it's so effective. It's so powerful that like I said, anyone can lose weight doing any stupid protocol. But it's the people who need the help most, which everything else fails. Like if you've tried everything in the world and nothing's worked, and the moderate deficit and great coaching and behavior change, nothing works. And there are millions of people out there that are like that to some extent, one extent or another. And your next thing is GLP-1s. That's the only thing that's going to help you because of your genetics, because of your previous, your history of where your body weight has been, because we know that prevention is better than cure in this instance. The only thing I think I haven't solved, although I've solved, I think, more than any other dietary method or diet protocol, is weight loss maintenance. I think my aggressive diet blueprint, I do think is revolutionary when it comes to weight loss maintenance, but it hasn't solved it in any way, shape or form. But if you look at the research as well, I'm going to do a podcast on this, but GLP-1s versus my aggressive dieting protocol, it works better than GLP-1. It's, and the research shows this time and time again. Well, not time and time again, but the few times it has been done, it beats it. The only thing that GLP-1, so you do aggressive dieting. I didn't plan to talk about this, but I'll just very quick summary. I haven't read this study for a long time, but GLP-1s versus aggressive dieting and GLP-1. And I did a post about this on Instagram ages and ages ago. And then I meant to follow up with a podcast, but I didn't. But I said, which wins? And aggressive dieting plus GLP-1 is no better for weight loss than just aggressive dieting alone. But the only thing that GLP-1s do have this unique impact on is maybe for pancreatic beta cell function, which is why, historically it's been a diabetes specific drug, and before it became something that was much more prevalent for use with obesity, etc. So, weight loss maintenance, I think the protocol I've created is the pinnacle of that. And the only thing that would then be better would maybe be GLP-1, but lifelong, and that is a big other discussion we probably shouldn't have right now. But yeah, going to your point of aggressive dieting and the pushback and the misunderstandings, I think there's two elements with this. Firstly, probably the biggest misunderstanding is this sustainability thing. No, actually, the first one I'll start with is the calories that you eat. Let's talk about you. Right, let me find this little thing. So the biggest misunderstanding is like aggressive dieting is ultra low calorie dieting. Now, if you do a rapid weight loss, I try to be specific with my wording. If you're doing rapid weight loss, that is, if we go to English grammar, rapid means fast, and weight loss, it's, total weight loss, not necessarily fat loss. And if people don't know from the previous podcast you and I have done, lots of what I'm doing is based on essentially this, the theoretical basis for the maximal amount of fat an individual can lose in a given time frame. There is a limit to that. So rapid weight loss would just be losing weight quickly. Well, that is going to equate to muscle loss. My aggressive dieting is dieting as aggressively as you can as an individual based on your anthropometrics. So the reason I asked you for your data is so that I could talk to people about, like, right, if Steve was to diet as aggressively as possible. So in my newest, the most recent and will not be updated, it's practically perfect calculator, you actually get to pick your I'm going to update the wording on it, but it's something like your comfortability and adversity to muscle loss is, I think, is the wording I'm going to use. So it's got like an adversity to muscle loss rating. And because we are still basing this on theory and certain estimations, and so if you've got a real adversity to muscle loss, which you do, I'm going to say, like, you don't want to lose any muscle ever because that's the pinnacle of your sport. For other sports and for health, irrelevant. Like, muscle loss is a boogeyman mostly. The only people who lose muscle are people who diet on too few calories. And that is why my calculator is wonderful, because it tells you where that happens. And I'm a big believer that the reason that so many bodybuilders do lose muscle, and why the best bodybuilders, natural bodybuilders like yourself, like the kind of 3DMJ type people, is because they diet for so long. Because the only way you can get ultra lean and maintain muscle as a natural is to diet on an incredibly small calorie deficit for an incredibly long period of time. Do you know roughly how many weeks out from a show you would be? I didn't ask you that. Like, roughly.
Oh, right now, I'm actually only like 10 pounds above a stage weight. 10 to 15 depends on, where you're getting to. But
Yeah.
maybe
But how
at
many
the
weeks? Because you
at the
stay
longest,
ultra lean.
20 at most. I think I could get stage ready in 10 probably.
Yeah. Yeah. But to be like your pinnacle, sort of like good, like 20.
15,
Like,
20, yeah.
yeah. So, and if people look at someone like you, like, I look at your training videos and I'm like, my God, like, I wish I just walked around like that all the time. It's just, but I know the dedication it requires, and that's not me, which is probably why I came up with aggressive dieting protocols. But again, the problem is to get from where I am to where you are gets slower. So it's a decaying curve of weight loss. The leaner you get, the slower things become, and that is the physiology of the situation. So when I did, I think it was 2016 or 2017, I can't remember if we've spoken about this, but I did my article in Alan Aragon's research review on dieting to single digit body fat levels and the paradigm shift of using an approach like this versus the typical, let's aim for 500 to 1,000 calorie deficit or 1 to 2 pounds a week fat loss or whatever. And the difference of what that would look like. And it essentially looks like people diet too slow to begin with, so they get behind the curve, and then they diet too fast at the end and they lose muscle, when it should actually look, I don't know, all the cameras are seeing me, but it at the end of it. And I think in the case study I did for the article I did for him, it ended up at like a 320 calorie deficit was anything more would lead to lean body mass loss. So and people are like, oh, 500 calorie deficit, or like bump cardio by half an hour a day. And it's just like, yeah, that's how you end up losing muscle. And the other way you lose muscle is just by not training, of course. So, but in your instance, I threw the numbers in, and I think going back to the point of what's the misunderstanding is you're going to be on very, very low calories. If you dieted as aggressively as my calculator would allow you to, so this is the fastest fat loss option, and I put on that lowest hunger, because that's often where people's hunger just switches off completely. And so it just makes things sustainable for someone who's not a bodybuilder like yourself and just wants to lose weight and be happy and get healthier. And muscle loss is irrelevant, and they're just going to regain it all anyway. And they're not at the pinnacle. They're probably going to gain muscle because lots of them are newbies and they've been inactive and whatever. Because we all know that you can gain muscle in a calorie deficit these days. Not for very long, but if you're a newbie, you can. But it would have you in week 1 on 1,823 calories. I don't think anyone will go, that's incredibly low. Like, that is probably low for you in terms of that's more where you would end up. But that's the absolute fastest possible rate of fat loss it would allow you. And it is telling you, do you know what, you're probably going to lose some muscle here, Steve. Then if you plug it into the kind of fast max muscle retention option, there's lots of elements of me within the calculator. You would be on 2,096 calories in your first week, and actually as soon as you got to week 2 you'd be up to 2,112 because you're losing body fat, and therefore and so if I go down here, even now 20-ish 15 to 20-ish weeks out from a show, the maximum deficit it has calculated for you is 579 calorie deficit per day. Anything more than that is lean body mass loss. So you get someone going, 1,000 calories a day, 500 calorie deficit a day, 500 to 1,000, whatever, adding in cardio, and they're losing muscle. So when people go, aggressive dieting, how long can you do it for? You can do it for as long as you want, but you have to do my way. You can't just go, I'm going to eat 300 calories a day. And, a big part, that's a big misconception that just for people who haven't bothered to listen to what I'm saying or bothered to look at the calculator. So in terms of the pushback in the industry, what's amazing is John Berardi, who is like the godfather of, at least in the fitness and personal training industry, of behavior change and slow, steady approaches. He gave a shout out to me in the Aggressive Dieting Blueprint on a podcast recently. Someone texted me, guess who's just shouted you out on a podcast? I was like, who?
That's awesome.
John Berardi. I was like, no way. No flipping way.
Is he still associated with Precision Nutrition?
He created it. He's the founder. Yeah. He's the man. Yeah. So
I didn't know if he'd sold it or I don't know.
He has sold it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I believe. Yeah, I'm almost certain.
But people will have, if they didn't know that name, they'll have heard of Precision Nutrition.
Precision Nutrition, the world's biggest hands, fists, whatever, fingers, thumbs. Sounds like it could be something else.
If people aren't aware of it, they'll be like, what the hell are you talking about?
But it's small, sustainable, quote unquote, changes and not doing things in a aggressive way or a dramatic way or whatever. And, he's someone who is, and in terms of behavior change, he's someone, I think he wrote a book or something. I certainly, when I first saw him speak, which was like 2011, in the UK, he was doing a big push around behavior change. And he had certain books. There was one that mentioned an elephant. Some of the old school people remember what it is. But anyway, for someone like him to go, yeah, this is a viable strategy. No one can hate on me. Like Reddit, I still remember when I first started putting this stuff out. And to be honest, I don't get any hate. Like I put in my question box there, why do so many respected coaches dislike it? And I'm like, I'm going to put it on my story and just go respected. Because I don't think any respected coaches really do that. It's brain dead people. It's people with their head in the sand. I've been talking about this for so long that anyone worth their weight, even if they don't want to coach that way or even if they don't know how to coach that way, you're a numbskull if you think if you talk badly about it, because it's just the research is unequivocal in this area. And it's not eating 300 calories a day. Like, my new calculator has all of these stops. Like I said, in the research, you'll get there's one study which is really cool in terms of some of the outcomes and measures, but I think they were on like 390 calories a day for a prolonged period of time. And so obviously there's like major ramifications of doing that for such a long period of time. And so we're not going to tell someone to do that, but we can learn stuff from that one study, and then we'll take other studies to go, do you know what, where maybe is a more viable thing, so that we don't get the negatives, but we get the positives. And that's what the calculator does. It has these stops to stop people doing stupid things. And so some people will go, whether I put fastest rate or slowest rate, it doesn't make any difference. And I'm like, yeah, because you can go that fast, but there's a stop stopping you there. And so it looks the same, but that's because you need to lose a whole boatload of fat before those numbers actually change for you. But yeah, in terms of pushback, I still remember like early days, someone sending me screenshots of Greg Knuckles saying stuff. People were basically going, it was like Stronger by Science forum or something on Reddit. And they were like, look at this, like just slamming me. And him and some others just came in and were like, yeah, I don't really disagree with anything he said. And I was like, that's cool. People like that who are just absolute nerds. They know everything. And they're just like, yeah, can't fault anything he said, soz. And all of their sort of like cronies, like, but
We want you to critique and fight against
they
this.
wanted to cause beef. So I think it is difficult. For 9 years, I didn't have any skin in the game. I wasn't trying to make money. I was just talking about something to try and help people, to try and give people a new tool in their box. And so, and nothing has changed with regards to my message now that I have a small financial gain, and like an incredibly small, for just the unbelievable amount. People are now creating these huge coaching programs and businesses around just aggressive dieting protocols, and it is the first system I've ever created. 20 years I've never created a system. I've never talked about a method. And this is the first time that I've packaged something up that someone could literally just take and implement. And people are just having these game-changing results for their clientele, because who does this work for? The people who need the most help, the people who have the most fat to lose. Those are the ones where it causes dramatic changes. Me doing my 3-week diet now, it's not going to look like anything special compared to anything else I could do. You doing it, it's just going to look like it will look exactly like what you already do, give or take. But it's the other people where you tell someone, you're going to diet for 100 weeks. And they're like, cool, I'm going to adhere for 4. Or you go, you're gonna diet for 3 weeks and you're gonna lose as much as you would have dieted in 100, because you're actually going to adhere for those 3, for instance. So I think there's loads of misunderstandings around regain and metabolism and muscle loss and everything. And I'll say now, but I will say again probably, and we'll maybe touch on it at the end. But I created a free summary lecture of the part 2 is basically all of the theoretical basis of aggressive dieting, and it's turned into 9. It's 9 parts, the aggressive dieting blueprint. Like I say, with 50 plus lectures. But part 2 is all about and that's the perceived behavioral control. When you learn that, like, you're literally getting a 59-year-old woman who's got no knowledge of nutrition or the fitness industry or anything, studying that and going, I understand. It's a bit like the Matrix. She got plugged in and it taught her everything. It's like, I get it. And I understand what I'm going to do. And I understand why it's going to benefit me. And I understand the different things that I might experience and where I might have to apply some more effort and willpower, and when it will become easier. I talk about this utopia that you reach, where it's just effortless fat loss. People losing 2, 3, 4 pounds a week with zero hunger, and they've never experienced that in their life. But they need to know how to get to utopia, and that's where the blueprint coaches them to do so. But I have actually created a TLDR, too long didn't read, for those people who aren't geek like me and
They
you
like the jump
probably,
cut.
um, version of the whole of part 2, which anyone can get access to. So I'll send you the link and you can
Awesome.
chuck it in the show notes. But and you can see it, and then you could basically get access to the aggressive diet blueprint area, so you can see it all, but you can only obviously access that free part. I think it, for some of the stuff, if people are like, what the hell, how can the Steve Hall be endorsing this crazy aggressive diet protocol? They can jump in there if they care to actually be teachable and go, here's all of the research that this is based on. This is what we're actually talking about here.
I think you did a great job of answering that question. And I actually really agree with you in terms of, I think if someone was actually evidence-based, they wouldn't be pushing against this. And actually, if they're a good coach, it's very similar to what you would try and achieve with most of your clients who are after what you just said there. They want to lose fat as efficiently as possible. Especially my clients want to retain their muscle mass. So I'm taking that a bit more so into consideration, but some of them less so. Obviously, some clients, they don't want short, sharp, aggressive diets. Maybe they've done it and it's burnt them in the past. But equally, that could be down to how they've ran it in the past. I imagine you have a lot of education on how to make it more adherable in terms of hunger management and kind of tricks and tips that you can do for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the fundamental basis of it is you look to lose in proportion to your body fat stores. The less you have of body fat you have, the less fast you and less aggressive you can be. It's not like this blanket, everyone's in a 2,000 calorie deficit.
Yeah.
But just like that's not a good protocol. The same as everyone being in a 500 calorie deficit doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
One question I would have for you, Martin, is there anything, does it assume anything in terms of like resistance training? I guess it gives a high protein diet. Like, because I'm thinking what else influences the risk of muscle loss outside of your calorie deficit? It would be like sleep, resistance training, protein intake, those sort of things. Does it? I guess it maybe the course educates people on how to make sure they've got a good. And why there's so many courses within the course.
Yeah, lectures. Yeah, so that's the key thing that the research doesn't do well. And it's super unfortunate because you get some of the research. There's a really cool paper that people will have heard me talk about loads, but Seaman et al. And it was following specifically postmenopausal women and using a sort of version of an aggressive diet protocol. But they didn't get them to do any exercise at all. And it was incredibly low protein. And the biggest negative finding was bone mineral density loss, which is obviously horrendous in that population. The two things that protect bone are protein and resistance training or exercise. So this is where we have to then learn from multiple studies. So with regards to retaining muscle, your key things are those two things as well, protein and resistance exercise. So that I've gone on one step further to give sort of evidence-based protein recommendations, and there is a selector to make it sort of based on preferences and based on, because what's wild is, given my history of calling people vegetards and vegans, is so many vegans are doing it and are in the community and are like my favorite people in the world right now. They're absolutely killing it. And so I think they've forgiven me for my sense of humor. But also forgiven me because they know their kinsmen are a bunch of gimps who are very annoying on the internet. But they're evidence-based vegans. They're doing it for their own ethical reasons, which is wonderful to walk your own journey, but not to tell people it's the most optimal way that humans should eat. And they know that. So, so for vegans, I don't know if I've got it here, but I think one of the protein selectors, no, I'm not going to be able to find it, but I think the protein selectors is like for protein, it's down the bottom and it's like, just goes low protein and then it's like, vegan are you, question mark. And it just because it is difficult when you are aggressive dieting, you are going to be so limited. And then in terms of sources of protein for a vegan, they are so much more limited and they push your carbs up, but they're doing amazingly and they're doing it and they're sort of all I'm not an expert vegan coach, but we do amazingly have an aggressive dieting mentor within the community who is. Um,
Lots of shakes.
yeah,
Not
exactly.
ideal
And
for hunger though.
have you heard of Satan?
Seitan, yes.
Satan, is that? Yeah. They talk about it constantly, and I'm like, guys, can someone actually bring me some of this crap to like the next event? Because it's all you talk about, and I feel a bit like I'm missing out. I'm not going to make it for
Is it
myself.
like a wheat protein or something like that?
Yeah,
It's one of those things.
yeah. They love it. So anyway, where were we? Muscle retention. So, it gives you these, and again, they're very evidence-based protein recommendations because the world of the fitness industry is so protein heavy. It's ridiculous. You don't, again, because we are talking muscle retention. But even then, do you know what? I don't think there is that much difference in the need for your protein intake. You probably need more protein when you need muscle retention than you do for gaining muscle because you're going to have more calories and more anabolic signaling or more ability to signal for anabolism, or less anabolic resistance due to dieting and calorie restriction. But I think people are sometimes surprised that the protein is lower than they're like, oh yeah, you need to have, you're aggressive dieting, so you're going to need 1.5 grams per pound or something stupid. It's just like, no, like there's no evidence that that's going to be beneficial. So they are. And the problem is when you start doing that, like if you go 200 grams of protein, it's like, cool, you've got absolute minimum 800 calories there. Like, what else are you going to fit within your diet? So there's a huge push around fiber within my aggressive dieting blueprint, which is probably, only something that I've really started pushing more in the last few years. Just educating people in that area, and it's really changing. It's been a nice change because it's the way it makes you eat makes you a healthier human being. And I think as well, as much as I think the industry is flooded with gut health gimps and microbiota gurus, and even the people who should be evidence-based, your Tim Spectors, Professor Tim Spectors, absolutely ruining the world with misinformation and just lying to people to make money, who did come from an evidence-based sort of background, or you just can't get good information. But whilst I poo-poo on their messages, on their lies, I still am like, do you know what? The gut microbiota area is a huge area, in my opinion, of where we'll advance our knowledge. And I think within the bodybuilding world and the discussions around metabolic adaptation or plateaus, or individual variability, and I think we maybe even discussed energy harvest with regards to genetics last time. But I think that's an area that we will advance our knowledge massively on in the future. So I'm almost trying to get a bit ahead of that, but without being non-evidence based or trying to be too cutting edge. But I'm just like, do you know what? This just makes you eat foods that's going to make you healthier. So it protects against one of the biggest drawbacks, which is just constipation, which just isn't nice. It's not good for you. Um, it has other issues it can bring along with it. So, and it can help probably with the types of food it makes you eat with satiation. And people who tend to deviate from the blueprint, get a bit too flexible, a bit too relaxed, go, and there's a huge push towards reflection within the aggressive diet blueprint, and people are loving that, and I never thought they would as much as they have. And they're like, yeah, I've been really reflective, and we had these check-ins on it, and they're like, yeah, I've been a bit reflective, and I realized that I was just being too flexible, and I was just not sticking to the basic guidelines that you've given us, and the wheels were starting to fall off a bit, and instantly. And this is when people go, oh, I've tried aggressive dieting and it didn't work for me. I'm like, have you? What did you do? Because I've never seen anyone teach it like me before. So who were you listening to and what were you doing? But I've had people DM me, hi Martin, do you use the 16.3 calories per something or other kilogram lean body mass is that way? And I'm like, no, where have you got this from? And oh, what do you expect me to do in a DM? Like, yes, cool, go and get some really great evidence-based results. Like, what is that? So yeah, the fiber, going back to your question, it's like, yeah, sleep, of course, but I don't talk too much about sleep because I mention it in passing, but it's like, yeah, do it if you can. I do actually talk a bit about the impact of aggressive dieting on sleep and what to expect. Again, just helping people with an understanding. But yeah, protein and resistance training. And then within there is a selector for selecting how many resistance training sessions you do per week. Obviously, I asked that for you. And then there is another factor in terms of other exercise. So this is another thing where people go, oh, I couldn't aggressive diet. And it's like, right, why not? It's like, I did it before. It was terrible. Don't know how anyone could do it. I was tired. I was lethargic. I got sick. It's like, oh, cool. What were we doing? Well, I was training for the CrossFit Games and I was eating 700 calories per day. And it's like, oh, this is such an interesting conversation because there's anything for me to learn here. It's like, of course you can't do it. It's like, it's common sense at this point. We don't need research. We don't need evidence. Like your grandma will tell you that you shouldn't do CrossFit and eat 700 calories a day. So there is a big factor of like, I use these 3-week blocks typically. I mean, it's one of the numbers I can pluck out of the air. And for these 3-week blocks, you dial back any aerobic type training. You can obviously have your steps and stuff, but there's no other training. You're not doing football training. You're not doing 2 hours of BJJ. You're not doing CrossFit. You're not doing spin classes. You're doing resistance training and you're doing some steps and you're eating what the calculator tells you to do. And if that's a 2,500 calorie deficit, you've got some massive fat loss to enjoy. Have fun. You don't need to be doing any cardio with that. And you're going to be losing insane amounts of body fat weekly. But as soon as people have, and I've even done it, even if I push my weight training a little bit too much. And I talk about this in the blueprint. And that's the good thing is you talk about it, people know it. So when they do it, they go, I know why I feel like shit. I know why my cravings have gone up. I know why my hunger's gone up because there was that hot girl in the gym and I decided to do an extra 10 sets of whatever just to be in that area of the gym. And I'm now slightly overreached. And that is going to lead to these, feelings of more fatigue. And so, yeah, it's dialing back that training. We're only focusing on muscle maintenance as its maximal fat loss. And that's why it's nice because you've got that one focus. We're not trying to be an elite athlete. We're not trying to be a bodybuilder. But even then, I do think it would suit a bodybuilder because bodybuilders do the right kind of training. And they're the people that everyone wants to give or take, look like, have muscle, maybe not be as big or whatever, but have muscle and be lean. We'll copy bodybuilders. Do you see them doing CrossFit? No. Do you see them jogging typically? No. What do? A few steps, some weight training, and they don't eat very much when they're really lean. And you just do that, but in more of I'm a 50-year-old man with 30 kilos to lose. What should I do? Well, similar, but you can eat way less. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really well answered. And I do think as you're talking through that, it's like that is like muscle retention at its finest towards the end of contest prep. Like you don't want to be doing cardio. You don't want to be doing excessive volumes and you want to make sure your deficit isn't too large because you are riding a tightrope. And when you're trying to lose fat aggressively, you are trying to push the limit knowing that you're pushing the limit, i.e. if you go over that, well, now you're losing other things as well. So I think that is what people end up, they just hear a parroted tidbit from you of like, diet as aggressively as you can. And so they're just like, oh, right, I'm going to 1,000 calorie deficit immediately day one. And they chop 1,000 calories out of their diet rather. And suddenly they increase their cardio massively. And yeah, that's a recipe for disaster immediately. That's not advised on your end at all.
No. And another thing is just copying other people. So they'll see one of an M&U graduate is helping her husband, and he's just talking about it on TikTok, and people are just going, like personal trainers, for instance, are just seeing he went quite viral on TikTok, and I'm like, screw you, man. Like, well, I want to go viral. Like, he doesn't even care. He's just getting hate that he doesn't want, and I'm like, I would love that much hate. It would be, but they just see that he's a man and he's eating less than 1,000 calories a day, and it's instant hate, and it's like, well, and it's like, look at what he's actually doing. Look at how much fat he has to lose. Look at what that actually equates with regards to a deficit. And it's perfectly sustainable. Actually, I'm just going to say this quickly because I thought about it earlier. Some people forget that when you're aggressive dieting, if someone wants to lose 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 15 kilos, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what protocol you lose. The area under the curve or your bar chart, the amount of calories that you need to be below your maintenance is exactly the same, whatever method you use. So if you want to lose a certain amount of energy from the body, you have to be in that amount of energy deficit. It doesn't matter whether you do it fast or slow. So when people go, well, you're not eating enough, it's not sustainable, it's unhealthy. It's like, well, let's say you have to create a 77,000 calorie deficit over time. Well, you're going to have to remove 77,000 calories of food and nutrition and nutrients from your diet, and so am I. The difference is I'm just going to remove them in a shorter period of time, and you're going to do it constantly. And so people sort of forget it's like you're getting the same amount of nutrition. It's just in different time periods. So all we really come back to is, what do you definitely need on a daily basis? Do you need to eat all of your vitamin A on a daily basis? No. Do you need to maybe get enough B vitamins daily? Yeah, because they're water soluble, it's maybe good to try and make sure we're getting those. Likewise, anyone who diets, typically, most half decent coaches go, do you know what? Because you'll be in a deficit for the next 12 weeks, we're going to give you a multivitamin and mineral, for instance. It's like, God, we're all taken care of on the micronutrient and front from that perspective. And then we're really just talking about some of the bioactive compounds that we're not really aware of or understand fully with regards to longevity and health. But again, you're eating the same amount of food. And again, when you aggressive diet, people's diets are so much more dialed in. Like you don't eat flexibly. You're probably on a 700 calorie diet or a 1500 calorie diet. You get, give or take, the same amount of nutrition. A lot of people, the way a lot of people diet, not bodybuilders, not your audience necessarily, but someone doing, I'll say Weight Watchers because I think they've gone out of business now, haven't they? So we use them doing their Weight Watchers diet. It's like the amount of flexibility they put in the extra 800 calories is just junk. You know, some even if it's not junk, if it's just some basmati rice or some bread, it's like, what nutrition are in those foods? Nothing. Like nothing that is really important for health or any of these things. So, you know, we're getting 700 calories of, and it is a very small number of calories in this one instance I've given. But you can get a lot of really good food and nutrition and fiber and micronutrients within those if you're picking the foods that are recommended on the aggressive diet. So yeah, that's that whole thing about, I just wanted to say with regards to, someone might only be eating 900 calories, but they're gonna have to diet. Like the research, it's like 9 to 11 weeks of dieting versus 6 months. It's like, and people try and compare, the person at 9 weeks versus the person at 6 months. It's like, no. Let's compare what we're both like at 6 months. Because I'll have been chilling at maintenance whilst you've been hating life. And that's the biggest impact I'm seeing with this, is the psychological impact. That's where more than at least 50% of the benefit is psychological. On top of all the amazing physiological benefits and just people being able to do it. I'm going to lose 4 pounds a week of fat for some people, and your coach is going to tell you to lose 1 to 2. Like, it sucks. If that person can physiologically lose 4 and be less hungry than you losing 1 to 2, it just doesn't make sense to me. That was one of the comments on Instagram. Why is not everyone doing this? And it is a bit tongue in cheek, but it is. In that instance, why? Why wouldn't? And I also get it. I spent the first 10 years of my career not doing this. So I'm not shaming anyone, but if you hear it, it's a bit like, you should be on board now. Like, it's unbelievable. Your clients can lose 4 pounds a week. You're going to look like a legend. They're going to feel amazing. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking.
It was great. I think it reminds me of the fact you can't force feed muscle gain. Who people talk about, like, hey, I'm going to be in a big surplus because I'm going to kind of gain loads of muscle this way.
So thank you.
You can't force feed muscle gain,
cool.
But
like that.
In terms of fat loss, I mean, you can really force the body to lose a lot of fat by dieting faster. Obviously, you've got your ceilings there within the calculator. But I even think about like the risk of muscle loss is just like you said, hey, if you do risk a little bit of muscle loss, but you diet for half or a third of the time, well, you've just got all this time growing now where maybe, yeah, you could have maintained a bit better. Maybe you could have grown something in an energy deficit, but almost in that case is like pick your poison, almost like a budget. Like if you've got £1,000 to spend, you can spank 800 in like one go and on a fancy whatever, and then you have to live off 200 for an extended time. It's like you can. It's not one is necessarily superior to the other. It's kind of preference based in a sense.
Yeah, 100%.
And in regards to actually some of these things that I've just said, hey, it's preference based, but I know you've talked about adherence, lower hunger, and also better weight management long term, which I think a lot of people would be surprised about. Which one of those is like the biggest, like this is quite clearly people experience? The less hunger would be the one where I think people would be shocked about. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to think, hunger has to be, hunger and motivation has to be where it's not preference based, as you just kind of pointed out. It's where I have become almost zealot like in like everyone who's doing this, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have sort of started on it. And obviously there's thousands of people who got my first calculator, but there was inherent issues with it. It didn't have as much of the individualization and ability to tweak it to yourself, and it didn't have half as much within there. And there's not just one calculator now, there's 5. There's a preparation phase calculator, there's the aggressive diet calculator, there's the aggressive diet calculator then takes you to the refeed calculator. So the aggressive diet calculator tells you when you need to refeed, which is quite cool, because I have spent so many years people asking me that question. I'm like, I don't know, no one knows. And now we've got a bit of a formula for it. So we've got the refeed calculator, and then you've got the body fat calculator, but then you've also got the positive weight regain calculator, which maybe we can touch on, because again, I feel like that's revolutionary. That's revolutionary in terms of, I think, the weight loss maintenance stuff. I've never seen anyone talk about a calculator, or I've never seen anyone talk about positive weight regain post dieting other than bodybuilders needing to gain body fat. But I'm talking about positive weight regain, and the positive is referring to lean body mass. And we now have a calculator that can tell us that. And maybe I'll leave that for a minute. We can talk about that separately. But there's all these different calculators that are based on evidence and the mathematics of the situation. And so, with regards to motivation and hunger, it's where things become very, very different. Sorry, I was just trying to think about why. One of the things that I said about the calculator that I thought would be really helpful, and I forgot it. It doesn't matter. With regards to hunger, it's very much a case of you're going to be less hungry by following this protocol, and that's what just the evidence shows time and time and time again. So there's a paper, if people want to go geek out, it's Gibson et al. I forget the year. It's a systematic review meta-analysis, maybe 2023, I'm going to guess. But anyway, Gibson et al., you'll find it easily. And it's basically looking at hunger and all of the studies that have looked at this. And there's a really nice forest plot that just shows, oh, goodness, actually, it seems like... And the typical thing, the way I teach in part 2 of the Aggressive Diet Blueprint is teaching people about the almost assumptions and why the assumption is absolutely normal. It's absolutely okay. I'm hungry when I eat a 500 calorie deficit or 1,000 calorie deficit, or I'm hungry when I eat a 500 calorie deficit. I'm really hungry when I eat a 1,000 calorie deficit. So of course I'm going to be starving on an 1,800 calorie deficit. It makes sense. The problem is none of the research shows that. It actually shows that hunger goes up and then falls off a cliff. There's lots of different reasons for this. And this is why I sort of wondered whether I would try and package something up to be like, the GLP-1 diet, but some gimp will have already done that and will be selling some BS. That, there's like these GLP-1 supplements now, which are
Yeah,
just.
I've seen.
Have you seen them? And I don't know what's in them, just like crap, just like some caffeine or
Probably loads of fiber and
yeah,
something.
yeah, some inulin and some caffeine. I don't know, just anyway. But the point is lots of the impacts, like slowed gastric emptying, is one of the profound physiological impacts of aggressive dieting. Essentially, this is the bullet point from the aggressive diet blueprint. Individuals doing aggressive diets were less hungry and had greater fullness whilst on the diet compared to maintenance calories. So they had less hunger even than not on a 500, not on a 1,000 calorie deficit. At maintenance, they're more hungry than in an aggressive diet. And then the thing that popped into my head when I sort of almost lost it, was changes were small, but they occurred within the context of energy restriction, which is known to increase appetite. So this is the unbelievable thing. So you even see in some studies like ghrelin, which typically will increase ghrelin, that hunger hormone that some people are aware of, increasing, but actually on aggressive diets, the weight loss related increase in ghrelin doesn't happen. And we also see that, so the Coutinho paper, which I'm sure you and I went over because I've been talking about the paper for so long, and pretty much ever since it was published in 2018, it's such a cool study because they basically take gradual or sort of small deficits and aggressive deficits and compare them during both weight loss phases and maintenance phases. And so they show very similar data to this. So there's many reasons that it will occur. So one of them is obviously the slowed gastric emptying. It just keeps people fuller for longer. One of the other reasons is some people get into ketosis through this method. So straight away for those people, I weirdly, considering how much I benefit from aggressive dieting, and it just no hunger, great mental clarity, like can train well, nothing, losing fat without really feeling like I'm trying. Lots of the food noise going, again, GLP-1 thing, if you've heard this discussion around taking these drugs and suddenly the desire to eat. There's actually another good paper. That might even be one of Jackson Pios's studies. But anyway, this desire to eat, no, his might have been intermittent energy restriction study. Anyway, reducing. No, you know what? It might be the PIOS. Anyway, we won't go there. So I don't get into ketosis. I measure my ketones and I do it. They elevate a little bit, but I don't ever get into like what you see in the research. And I'm like, oh, that's a bit annoying. And I have got quite a few people to measure it. At my seminars, I gave out some keto sticks for people, like, go pee on these. It's nothing kinky. It's just measuring some keto sticks when you do your aggressive diet. And honestly, lots of them did reach the utopia, which is where this hunger just switches off. You're just stripping body fat like no man's business, and you're not hungry. And lots of people weren't in ketosis. So lots of people just go, oh yeah, you might as well just do keto. Well, for a start, if you're doing a keto diet, typically people are consuming too many calories to lose fat very quickly. They're like, oh, I'm not hungry. It's like, yeah, and you're in a 500 to 1,000 calorie deficit. Like, it doesn't really matter what you do. So being able to do this, maintain muscle, have no hunger, and whether you are or not in ketosis, it's another one of the factors. I also have some questions in my mind around certain gut-brain axis signaling with regards to energy movement and gastric emptying through the duodenum. That there's some like really quirky research, and so it's probably a bit unnecessarily advanced. But the way I typically describe it is, have you ever done intermittent fasting yourself, like breakfast skipping?
Yeah, I've done breakfast skipping.
What was
I
the
never really
shake of your
think of
head?
it.
You never
I
think
was
of it
like,
as
no,
intermittent fasting. Well, that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. I was thinking also like a day of fasting, but no,
Sure,
I've definitely
alternative.
done skipping breakfast
Cool, yeah. So
regularly.
delayed eating, like windowed eating, is essentially what I'm discussing here. Most people have done that, have experienced this phenomenon. You wake up, you're not particularly hungry. You skip breakfast, you go through, you maybe get a little bit of a hunger pang, whatever time is normal for you. You get to midday, actually, I'm not too bad. You get to one, oh, look, this is quite good. Like I did have that hunger pan, but actually hunger comes in these waves. And I talked loads about this many years ago when I talked about 36-hour fast as a bit of a reset for people around both physiological and psychological hunger. Um, but then you get to say 2 p.m. You're doing this 16-8 lean gains protocol. Do you remember that, or did you ever
I do
come?
know it. Yeah, for
That's
sure.
hilarious, Martin Burkhan, like back
Yeah,
way back in the day.
legend.
Um, it's cool to recount that
Yeah.
nostalgic sort of stuff. But you get to 2 p.m. and you eat your first meal. What happens to hunger? Most people go instantly, hunger switched on. I'm super hungry. I'm now wanting my next meal. There's something about that around either the calorie load of that meal. Some people make up some BS about, carbs are stimulating appetite or whatever, but we know that insulin's actually an anorexigenic hormone, so it's definitely not that. But there's something happening there. So if you are someone who's on 700 calories, I'll keep using that figure, you look at what the meals are going to look like. And again, I'll just say this quickly. Depending on your protein intake and depending on what the calculator is telling you calorie wise, there are then recommendations around your meal frequency. Because when you are eating the bare minimum protein, and we're talking enough protein to definitely maintain muscle, but you've not got any excess protein, if you split that into too many meals, you actually will end up in a state where you will lose muscle because in dieting in periods of very in energy restriction, we do get this sort of anabolic resistance, like our muscles response to protein amino acids is reduced. And it's the same as we get in aging. The reason aging people lose muscle is not because they stop building it. It increases the breaking down. Everyone thinks, oh, you get more breakdown of muscle when you get old. That doesn't happen. Muscle protein breakdown doesn't really increase much, but muscle protein synthesis in response to protein feeding massively reduces. And how can we bring that back? Resistance training, wonderful, and increasing leucine per feeding. So high quality protein or just more protein per serving. So, and all the studies have been done in the elderly populations because it's well-funded research, because it's important for our elderly population. It's better if your grandma is eating, you know, 0.7 grams per kilogram protein. It's way better for her to take the little bit of protein she's having at breakfast and the little bit of protein she's having at lunch and the moderate amount of protein at dinner and put them all into a single meal and have no protein the rest of the day. She will be way better off with regards to sarcopenia by doing that than spreading it out. So it's the same thing that we're looking at, this anabolic resistance. If you spread your protein out too much, you don't hit those leucine thresholds and you actually end up in a worse state because of it. So sort of total area under the curve of muscle protein synthesis is lower. So that's just a little side. But yeah, back to your question, hunger. This is why my protocol is getting these great results and people are finding it game changing, because it's also then improving people's relationship with food. You're not straining your willpower. You're not constantly going, I need to apply effort and I need to resist eating that food. Like I'm such a picker and I pick at my children's food and I love sweets and I'll never say no to, offering whatever chocolate. And I won't do that. I won't apply willpower because I'm lazy as hell. But when I'm aggressive dieting, I don't have to apply any willpower. I can very, very easily just go, nah, I'm all right. And I've eaten 600 calories that day. And that's another game changer for people. You can either take this drug, GLP-1, which, depending what people's views are on these, they are a pharmaceutical. They do have side effects. There are still unknowns out there. Or you can do this aggressive diet protocol, which is completely natural, and you get the same benefits. The difference is you can't live forever on an aggressive diet. So I will say that you can't. It's not sustainable, obviously. Living on GLP-1 is an option. It's maybe not a great option. But for some people, it's probably the better option of the alternative. And again, that's a big debate. That have you had people on talking about that? I imagine you've had
Oh,
Mike on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Crystal, what Mike's wife came on. Yeah.
Cool, amazing, yeah. So they obviously talk from a good evidence-based perspective, and also like a nice philosophical perspective as well. I like that
They
about
both
Mike.
used it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I have like the scientific understanding, but I do like one thing about Mike when I first met him is he's just this joker, like so brash and so doesn't seem like he takes anything seriously, and then obviously clever, but actually when he answers questions I like that you sort of there was a comparison that you used with me and him. It's like I like some of the answers he gave when he talked about intuitive eating. I thought he's not going to know anything about that. You know, why is someone asking him that? And his answer was amazing, like so like deep. He's a deep thinker. Anyway, off
for sure.
topic. So GLP-1, removing hunger, removing food noise, the evidence all supports it. And now I've got hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of anecdotes, which are irrelevant, but they're just, this is what people are finding. And the people who don't find it, I'm like, cool, just tell me what you're doing again. Oh, you're still jogging. That's why, you moron. Like, you have to listen to me. You can't go, your protocol doesn't work, and then go, yeah, but I'm still jogging. It's like, that's why you're hungry. Probably. Or whatever. Um, or your calories aren't low enough. That's a big one that I'll just say to you, Steve. I don't think it would switch your hunger off at 2,000 calories. You're not in a big enough deficit. You're still, there's enough of a calorie load if we go into my hypothesis around this gut brain axis duodenum calorie flow. You're probably not in ketosis. Your gastric emptying is probably not slowed. This is why even me now, my deficit isn't that big based on the calculator. So another thing on the preferences, I tell the calculator, I know what you've told me, but I'm going to consume 900 to 1,200 calories a day because you're telling me to consume 1,400 to 1,700, 1,600. And I don't feel good there. My hunger doesn't switch off as much. So it then says to me, cool, you're going to do that. Your refeed now needs to move from here to here. And this is how you need to change your macros in this period. And this is what you need to refeed. These are the macros for your refeed based on that. And so it's nice. That's all the maths and the thinking that other people just couldn't do. And I wouldn't want to have to do manually. So the calculator comes into its own there. But yeah, the hunger one, like you've said, is obviously interesting for you switching that off. I think when as well, I'm not using this. Two or three people have used it for sort of physique shows. No one's that I know of has used it really for a bodybuilding stage situation. But honestly, the things that happen when you're that lean, mainly regulated by leptin, I don't think you can get around. I don't think there's anything in the world other than maybe GLP-1. I don't know. Um, uh, or like your not next generations, your terzepatides, which are like GIP and GLP-1, like really hacking the whole system. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that's going to cut off, maintain muscle mass. I do think if a bodybuilder like yourself ate 600 calories a day, you probably will. It's a starvation response. Like that's what's happening, but you
Yeah.
hemorrhage muscle. So it's no good.
You go below that, like lower intervention point of body fat, and that's just when everything seems like shit starts to hit the fan, basically,
Exactly.
because the
Yeah,
body's like,
you're
hey,
just
we.
completely obsessed with food and you get an eating disorder or whatever.
Yeah, short-term eating disorder definitely occurs. Uh,
Definitely.
it's funny. I was thinking when you were talking through this, I was going back to that like budget. If you know if you've got a really small budget, then you know you can only spend it on essentials. You don't start thinking about all you've got to spend on.
Yeah.
And this has happened to some of my guys who are just coming out of their contest prep, where they're more food focused and by that more hungry because they're thinking about food more because they've got more choice, whereas they were much more restricted previously.
Yeah.
But from the sounds of it, that maybe isn't like a big part of the hunger management, but I imagine it plays into it to some extent. There's definitely something going on that seems almost like we haven't quite got the like fundamental understanding of it just yet.
So there's a huge factor here, and one of the ways I describe this is decision fatigue, if you've ever heard of it.
Yes,
So
for sure.
if we put it in like a business sense, you know, it's these top CEOs who just have one outfit and they just wear that same thing all the time. Decision fatigue, because it's just, you can, you know, it's a constant. If you say to someone, and I've been saying this even before I talked about aggressive dieting. You go to someone, just eat a little bit less. How do you normally eat? And this is how typical dietetic nutrition is taught for decades and decades, which is why all of the government funding has gone from dietetic services, because it's crap. It's how do you like to eat? Like this. Cool. Don't eat like that. Eat less. Like, how do you eat to feel good? Don't eat like that. Eat less. Control your portions. That is the crux of it. Cool. I'm going to feel like crap all the time. It's never been, how can we improve that? What can we add? Like, and protein, my God, like dietetics has been so behind on protein. Rather than going, do you know what? If I do this, if I just give you a 30-gram whey shake a day, that reduces total energy intake, 24-hour total energy intake. And 50-gram, I think it was in this study that I'm thinking of, that reduces energy intake. Like, take this nice taking chocolate shake and you're going to lose body fat. Yes, please. Or eat less potato. Like, it just doesn't work. So the decision fatigue side of things is like, well, here's 2,000 calories or 1,800 calories that you can eat. Just pick some meals to make that up. Way too much choice, way too much room for error, way too much room to just go, I'll just have a bit of this, a bit of that. Whereas again, the 700 calories, the 900 calories, the whatever, you know what you're having. It's already predefined pretty much. It's mostly going to be from a handful of foods that you know you can eat and enjoy and taste good. There's been a lot of reflection recently in the aggressive dieting community around taste and making meals feel good. And actually, one of my staff ended up using the blueprint, and she's really creative and a great cook. And she was like, I cooked too good food. And it was not
Yes.
helpful to me. Like, bodybuilders have been doing this forever. You don't want to make everything taste amazing because then you just want more of it.
Yes.
So I have a whole section within the blueprint talking about the tightrope between you cannot hate yourself into change, but you will not stick to anything if you dislike the foods that you're eating. So it turns into, I called it an overpriced cabbage soup diet. If you're going, oh shit, I've got to eat one of those crappy Cambridge plan shakes, taste disgusting, bleh, or I'm having this cabbage soup or whatever, you're not going to stick to it. But if you can find meals that you do like the taste of, and you eat those, but then you eat them sort of repetitively, and you're not having loads of taste variety, you're not having hyper palatable foods, you end up going, oh, I know what I'm having next. I do like that meal, but I'm not like gagging for it. And it just helps with the adherence. So when you ask me what the best thing about aggressive dieting, and you said hunger, and I think that is true because if you had to compete, if it was versus adherence, I think hunger ties into adherence. So hunger's sort of the winner, but the adherence side of it, it's also multifactorial. And if you look at the research around adherence, I mean, it's hilarious. I read a hell of a lot of research over the last 9 years, but doing this blueprint, I've read everything. And I've convinced myself even more that it's just better than anything in the whole wide world ever for people who need to lose weight. Like, and I say need because you do it for sport and aesthetics. These people need to do it for their health and their family and themselves and those sorts of things. And it just nothing comes close to it with regards to adherence and the dropout rates you see in the research. And that I don't know if I've got it here. I will be able to find it very quickly, so I won't waste your time. But I have a slide that I deliver, which is I found it quickly, I think. Yeah, here we go. So evidence directly refuting the belief is the title of the slide. So I typically go through and this is adherence and weight loss maintenance, exposition and reasons for the belief. So people associate fast weight loss with shake programs. Moderate just feels better. Many public guidelines rely on it without basis, etc. And then I have this quote from this guy: if normal diets are hard for people to adhere to, then an aggressive diet must be harder. So that's like the belief. And then going into like evidence directly refuting the belief. So talking about some of the studies, and I go through a whole bunch of different studies, but then there's this one. So it's Purcell et al. 2014, and it's cool. Far more participants stopped the gradual than the rapid weight loss program. So these are using extreme deficits. Okay, so this is oh no, I haven't got the exact details on this slide, so it's probably in the longer version. But anyway, they essentially showed that the gradual weight loss program, when people were assigned to that group, 1% withdrew before starting. So probably like every study is like someone couldn't make it, they couldn't come to the clinic, whatever. But after being put on the gradual weight loss program, 1 in 5 people withdrew from the study due to difficulty adhering to the diet on like just a bog standard moderate, like 400 to 500 calorie deficit. And also due to psychological stress. And then you go over to the rapid weight loss, which it's funny as well. Do you know what intention to treat analysis is?
I haven't heard of that, no.
So intention to treat analysis is a cool thing used in research, which obviously when you do a study, if you only measure the people that get to the end of your study, you lose a whole bunch of data, and it can cause a type of bias. So you end up just going, well, this is the outcome. But like this study, I'm just telling you, 20% of people dropped out because they couldn't adhere to the moderate deficit. So straight away, that makes the moderate deficit seem better. So if
It's like a survivorship bias. Is that similar?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Whereas only 3% dropped out due to difficulty adhering in the aggressive protocol. So it's insane that you go, okay, moderate protocol, and when you compare them like that, you go, oh, they're not aggressive diet did win, but not by as much as we expected. But what you do is an intention to treat analysis. So I have an intention to treat you with this intervention. So you can do intention to treat analysis with statins and whatever. But then you can look at people who, it's interesting when you do this and you use placebo, and actually people get healthier even when taking placebo because they are health-seeking individuals. And so then you have to do the statistical magics to make sure that you're accounting for that. But in this instance, with intention to treat analysis, it's like, well, if we put those 20% back in, actually the moderate deficit was terrible because no one achieved any, 20% were achieving nothing. And because they had to drop out, but also they lost less weight, and they maintained less of that weight loss, etc. Yeah, that Purcell paper is another one that just helps us go, yeah, adherence, it's massive. And why did they adhere? Well, you step on the scales and you actually see weight loss. And as much as like my aggressive diet tells people to try and not hyper focus on the scales, and there's some tools and techniques around how to do that, everyone does it. And I'm saying everyone, like even like you're, oh, I'm the most level-headed, I don't really care about that. You do.
Yeah.
Every coach who tells you don't focus on it, you do, because you know full well at some point that scale will change. It doesn't tell you everything because it will change. Like people losing 20 pounds in a week on the aggressive diet. And I'm like, you need to check yourself, because if you expect that sort of progress, that is because you're a very heavy individual and you've lost an insane amount of water. So again, through trying to help people understand their weight loss. So again, the aggressive diet calculator shows people what the calculator is expecting your weight loss to be, that is pure fat. So anything above that, and that's where some of the positive weight regain calculator comes in. If you have lost 30 pounds and the calculator knows that physiologically you shouldn't have been able to lose any more than 22, the positive weight regain calculator will literally tell you you need to regain 8 pounds, and that's positive weight regain. And if you don't do that, you're an idiot. It doesn't really tell you that, but it goes, you have to gain that, otherwise you've failed. You have to gain 8 pounds in this time frame, and this is how you're going to do it. And then people gain 8 pounds and then they keep eating like normal, and then they go, oh, those weight fluctuations that always threw my head off. And I had a weekend where I had some Dominoes and my weight spiked by 4 pounds, and then I hated myself, and then I restricted in the week. I know you've got like these interesting philosophical or whatever questions around like the ethics behind the aggressive dieting, and when is it problematic, when is it not. And this is why I'm so passionate about the protocol, is because these cycles that people get into with poor relationship with food comes from this thing of like, lots of people live in a slightly glycogen depleted state because most of the population eats a slightly higher fat, moderate carb, whatever protein diet. And we know that we can swell our glycogen stores massively. And then and if someone is restricting because they are trying to change the way they feel, but then they go on their weekends and they have these spikes, it's just this cycle of binge, restrict,
Yeah.
and that's when it becomes pathological at times. So you go to people, you must regain X number of kilos, and it gives you this range and the calculations of, and whether you're doing a refeed or a diet break or going into a maintenance phase, it tells you which of those ranges you should be looking at. Because on a refeed, you will see a bigger spike because it's aggressive refeeds. So yeah, the adherence coming from all of these different areas, is why I think it's amazing.
I think I'm pretty sold. I think the audience probably are too. The analogy that's immediately coming to mind is like, hey, we're trying to rip off a plaster as quickly as possible without like tearing the skin or damaging what you've just healed underneath it, versus trying to peel it off really slowly and delicately, and you just kind of giving up or what have you. It's like a lot of people are going to choose, hey, just get this over and done with quickly, please.
Yeah, and there's another paper actually, Seidler. I don't really know how you spell that. I just remember saying it, Seidler. And that's probably a 2023 paper, which is, the reason I remember the Seidler paper is because for a long time I thought it was the Bill Campbell paper, because he's done some cool stuff in the area of intermittent energy restriction as opposed to continuous. But this study looked at, I don't think it was intermittent energy restriction, but it may have been. But it was periods of, yeah, it may well have been. But it was very much like an aggressive diet in terms of aggressively dieting and then having periods of like I said, 1 to 3 day refeeds or 1 to 2 week diet breaks or maintenance periods or whatever. And but they measured what's called disinhibition. And for me, one of the worst things that can happen to someone is they become disinhibited, which is basically a loss of control around food, to put it in like layman's terms. And all failed, quote unquote, dieters seem to suffer from this massively. And if you do a 12-week moderate deficit and it's all got flowers and roses and you're using hands and fists and whatever, and you're a moderate deficit and you're making small behavioral changes, it doesn't matter. The size of your deficit matters not at all how much you are impacted by food restriction. Your brain doesn't register the level of calorie deficit. It registers your mental focus on food. So you can have an eating disorder even when you're at maintenance, just orthorexic behaviors. You can be in a 500 calorie deficit and you do that for 6 months. And this is what this Seidler paper shows is increased measures of disinhibition. So you lose control around, because you've been dieting for so frigging long that you want to just hit the fuck it button. Whereas you diet for 3 weeks and you're like, oh, what, I'm getting to eat 800 grams of carbs today. Cool. Like, and this is what the Jackson Pios paper, can't remember what protocol they used exactly, but it was one of his intermittent energy restriction studies. And it's like, they're adhering more, and all of the data, like I've the whole, I think it's part 9 or part 8. It's all about multiphasic dieting and how people should set that up using the aggressive diet. And all the stuff that you and I discussed 2, 3, 4 years ago is now like part of this, how they should set it up. But it gives you this. Why do we see like things like the Matador study and all these things of like, why do we see people dieting for way less time and having whole periods of 1, 2 weeks, whatever, where they're not dieting, losing more fat than the groups that dieted the whole time, even when calories aren't matched, even when the continuous energy groups are in a bigger calorie deficit? because sometimes they do match the calorie deficit and they just extend the time, which again is another discussion. But even when the calorie deficit supposedly should be bigger, the intermittent group, which ended up eating more calories over the period, like you keep talking about this budget, they lost more. Why? Because they actually frigging stuck to it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, like, everyone knows you diet 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks in, your adherence starts to go down. And the people who end up the best natural bodybuilders are the ones who just have something different about them. They're just freaks. You're just a freak. Like, it's just a different mindset that normal people don't have. You can't punish yourself in the way that you do and be normal. Like, you cut from a different thing. Most of us need this intermittent way of doing things, and because people want to live their life. When your life is bodybuilding, it suddenly is easier. Like, it's identity-based behavior change. It's being part of a CrossFit community. Suddenly eating better or being paleo or whatever seems normal, and everyone pushes you towards living that way, and that's what bodybuilding does to people. But when you have a normal life, it's not cool to make every decision based on food and your physique. So these intermittent protocols and the aggressive dieting is just cool. Get insane results in 3 weeks that you would normally in 12 or more, at least double, 6 to 12, and then have a break, whether that break's only 3 days and then you're back on it. And some people have to do so many of these 3 weeks, but at the end of it, they're not disinhibited. So they're not then binging. They're not then regaining. They haven't lost all control around food because they haven't forgotten what it's like to feel full. So yeah.
I think something you mentioned there, I've definitely seen, I've heard about this research. It might have been from Menno, and we probably have spoken about it too, in terms of like not knowing the calorie deficit. Like sometimes just telling someone they're in a calorie deficit. I remember actually a client reached out to me and was like, oh, I'm really struggling with the diet. Can I have a refeed, whatever? And I was like, okay, we'll take a refeed day. And then they checked in. They're like, I didn't take the refeed. As soon as you told me I could have a refeed, I didn't feel hungry anymore. It's like, this is how much of it is just psychological. It's a wonder why I think meal plans sometimes work really well for people, because then they don't know the macros or the calories. They just see it and they're like, right, I just eat it. And it could be a huge deficit, but they're like none the wiser. Of course, if you've done macros for a while, everything, you know the numbers and you can kind of identify it. But sometimes following that, like you said, the monotony for that short period of time, I can definitely see why it's been so successful and why there's a lot of research also backing it up. But it's, as you said, it's like I don't know, it's like once we thought the earth was flat because all you could see in front of you was flat, although there's some people that still believe this, of course, unfortunately. But it's like, again, on paper, some of this just doesn't make like intuitive sense, but it's true. And it's like those, I think you talked about it before, where these like well-meaning evidence-based practitioners will say, oh, aggressive dieting, like you're going to lose muscle, it's not going to be sustainable, so on and so forth. It's like, actually, like, have you looked at the research? Because that, if you look at the evidence, it doesn't suggest this. Yeah, Martin, we've been talking for quite a while. We probably have another 2-hour podcast we could do talking about, I think some of the multiphasic stuff would be really interesting. Yeah. And then also, I think particularly interesting because I actually think I have not heard anyone really talk about it in terms of that kind of positive weight rebound almost afterwards. Obviously in bodybuilding circles, especially in the enhanced side, they talk about this magic rebound post-show. And I've spoken about it with clients before in terms of expect this weight gain a couple of weeks afterwards. Don't kind of focus too much on the scale. It's not kind of informative of like fat gain or anything like that. But I'd love to talk about that in a bit more depth another time if you're game for it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I think, it's always lovely talking to you. It's just like,
I appreciate it.
Saves my brain alight, and like your insights and questions are cool. I genuinely think we've probably covered about 50% of what we might have in just even still just scratching the surface. So I'd love to come back, talk about the positive weight regain stuff. I'll prepare a bit better this time. But yeah, no, that would be cool. I do think there's even actually, I'm just saying this out loud because it'll lock it in my brain, but talking about, it is good because long-term weight loss maintenance is a big topic. And the propensity for weight regain. There's interesting research, and I think that would be something even for some of your evidence-based listeners. Probably a whole bunch of them don't know it and don't know what the research says around what's the deciding factor. Because just to reiterate, I have not solved the unsolvable potentially issue of long-term weight regain, because long-term weight loss maintainers living in weight reduced bodies, metabolic adaptation, we don't know if that ever goes away. So there's huge discussions around this of what the impact is, what are the deciding factors, so that there's a cool systematic review meta-analysis that we could talk about that looks at different weight loss behavior programs and the sort of characteristics of those, and then the different characteristics of different methods, and then the weight regain to follow up and over years, which ones and what characteristics were associated with weight regain and what things were making regain faster or slower. And as you can probably guess, the calorie deficit that you used was not related to faster weight regain. But everyone thinks that, right? Everyone goes, well, if you lose weight quickly, you're going to regain it quick. And I probably was guilty of saying that for at least 5 years of my career. So it'd be cool for us to go into the research on that and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, again, one of those things that intuitively feels like it makes sense. And so you can just say it as if it's fact, but actually when you dig into it, not necessarily. So I think people have really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed this. It's always great catching up with you, Martin. And I think the listeners will really enjoy it. So it'd be great to kind of jump on here again and talk about some of those things in a bit more depth. Obviously, I'm going to have linked the blueprint below so people can kind of dig into that. Yeah. And I think you also said MNU enrollments are now going. So if people want to enroll, now's the time they can get into that. What are the dates to that? Because this will come out a bit later than what we're recording here.
Yeah.
Make sure it's out in time.
Yeah. So enrollments are open currently. They close at the start of or early half of July. So yeah, again, I suppose if anyone, because it has been 2 years since I've been here with you, if anyone's totally new to me and my work and it's an area that they want to, they're a personal trainer or a coach or want to be, it's really lovely actually. Loads of people who are like coaches, they've done MNU, become a graduate, they're coaching their clients, and they've instilled so much passion in their client that their client's gone, I want to do MNU. And it's like, it's so lovely that I think that to have that impact on someone that you help them with their health and they get so interested in the process that they then want to study to do that. But, if anyone has been listening to this and thinks, I want to know more, like, hopefully you can link it, but macnutritionuni.com, they can go and actually see the qualification side of the stuff. The aggressive dieting stuff, again, you can link it, but it's actually on study-nutrition.com, which is where a bunch of sort of different courses we're going to have. Like our prerequisite course for MNU is on studynutrition.com, as well as my aggressive dieting blueprint. But yeah, I will link you to a thing where people can chuck their email address in and get that free access to that sort of free area of talking about all the theory behind this stuff.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll make sure that's all linked in the description so you guys can check all of that out, and obviously all your social media so people can follow along with you on there. But otherwise, thank you again, Martin, and thank you guys for listening.
Thanks so much.